Let's take you back to central London, where the Prime Minister David Cameron is going to be speaking about Europe.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for that welcome. Almost 3 years ago, I made a speech about Europe. I argued that the European Union needed to reform if it was to meet the challenges of the 21st century. I argued that Britain's best future lay within a reformed European Union if the necessary changes could be agreed. And I promised the British people that if I was re-elected as Prime Minister, we would have an in-out referendum and the final say on whether our national and economic security is better protected by remaining in the European Union or by leaving. That promise is now being honoured. The law of the land will require that there must be a referendum on our EU membership by the end of 2017. The renegotiation is now entering its formal phase following several rounds of technical discussions. And today I'm writing to the President of the European Council, setting out how I want to address the concerns of the British people and why I believe that the changes that Britain is seeking will benefit not just Britain, but the European Union as a whole. Now, it would, of course, be for the negotiation itself to conclude the precise legal changes needed to bring about the reforms that Britain needs. But today I want to explain in more detail why we want to make the changes we've set out and how they'll make a difference. This is perhaps the most important decision that the British people will have to take at the ballot box in our lifetimes. So I want to set out for the British people why this referendum matters and some of the issues we should weigh up very carefully as the arguments ebb and flow as we approach the referendum. You will have to judge what is best for you and your family, for your children and grandchildren, for our country, for our future. It will be your decision whether to remain in the EU on the basis of the reforms we secure or whether we leave. Your decision. Nobody else's. Not politicians, not parliaments, not lobby groups, not mine. Just you. You, the British people, will decide. At that moment, you'll hold this country's destiny in your hands. This is a huge decision for our country, perhaps the biggest we'll make in our lifetimes. And it will be the final decision. So to those who suggest that a decision in the referendum to leave would merely produce another stronger renegotiation and then a second referendum in which Britain could stay, I say, think again. The renegotiation is happening right now, and the referendum that follows will be a once-in-a-generation choice, an in or out referendum. When the British people speak, their voice will be respected, not ignored. If we vote to leave, then we will leave. There'll not be another renegotiation and another referendum. So I say to my European counterparts with whom I'm negotiating, this is our only chance to get this right for Britain and for the whole European Union. And I say to those who are thinking about voting to leave, think very carefully because this choice cannot be undone. And to those who are campaigning to leave but actually hoping for a second referendum, I say, decide what you believe in. If you think we should leave, and leave means leave, then campaign for that and vote for it. But if you're actually arguing for a better relationship between Britain and the European Union, then don't campaign to get out, work with me to get that better deal for Britain. Thank you very much. We've got some time for questions. So if you put up your hand and say who you are and where you're from, I'll try and get around a few of you. Let's.
James Lerner from the BBC. Prime Minister, you say this is, just in case, for the tape, you say this is not mission impossible, but isn't that the point? It's actually mission quite possible, and that it's not the fundamental reform that you once promised. There's no emergency brake on immigration, there's no reclaimed powers over workers' rights, there's no legally binding treaty change before a referendum. And secondly, on the specifics on the migrants issue, can you name one EU country that has signalled to you that it is willing to allow you to discriminate against migrants by cutting their benefits?
Well, first of all, on whether this is mission impossible, mission possible, mission vaguely possible, mission quite difficult, I would say to the BBC, you can't have it both ways, right? You often go around European countries and people tell you this is impossible. This is incredibly difficult to achieve. Why is the British Prime Minister asking for so much? And then on the other hand, you say, well, this is obviously very easy, otherwise he wouldn't be setting it out. I suspect the truth lies somewhere between those two things. This is challenging, this is substantial, it is going to be difficult to achieve, and if we do achieve it, it'll make a real difference. But you've now got the 4 areas, more detail in each case, what a difference it would mean, why it matters, why these are the things that matter to the British people, and I would argue it is mission possible, but it's going to take a lot of hard work to get there, but it's absolutely the right targets and the right things to do. As for other countries and what they've said on the issue of migration and welfare, I think there is a lot of sympathy and understanding for the difficulties that we face. If you think about it, migration on the scale that has happened in Europe, this just was not foreseen when these rules were first introduced. And it's obviously, we look at it from our perspective, and a net migration of 330,000 a year is too high, but it's also worth looking at it from the position of the countries from which those people are coming. You actually see a decline in the population, whether you look at Romania or Bulgaria. You look at some countries that have seen many of their most talented people leave, and instead of building their own countries, they're coming to help build ours, which is great in many ways, but the pressures, as I've said, have been too great. So it's a much more nuanced discussion than you might think when you go to European countries and talk to them about this issue. There's an understanding that there's a problem, the understanding of the challenge, but it's obviously going to be difficult to find the right way through it. But I'm absolutely determined to do that because, we shouldn't have to choose between having effective migration control and being a member of the European Union. I want both, and I'm determined to get both. The British people want me to get both, and that's what I'm going to dedicate myself to doing. Let's have George Parker from the FT. And then we might have some questions. We've got some European press here as well, if you can.
A couple of business-related questions. The first one, you didn't mention the Working Time Directive. Could I just clarify that you're not seeking to change the Working Time Directive as part of these negotiations? And just more broadly, what would you say to business leaders who watched the scenes at the CBI conference yesterday and might think, I'm going to keep my head down in this and not speak out during this referendum campaign?
Well, on the second one, if you're worried about 2 people holding up a banner and repeating 3 words over and over again, then, if you can't stand that heat, I'm not sure you get into any kitchen. So I wouldn't worry about that. I think, look, there's some important questions, when we're dealing with conferences and security and people pretending to be business and what have you. That's not for me, that's for others to look at. But business knows this is an important issue, not just big business that we hear a lot from, but also smaller businesses, entrepreneurs, startups. In this debate, let's hear from everybody. Let's hear also concrete examples. I think this is one of the issues we have when we're trying to explain why trade deals with America make so much difference, is the people sort of leading the debate on TTIP sometimes are, NGOs talking about chlorinated chickens or the NHS, both of which actually are irrelevant. We need to hear much more from the small garment manufacturer that says, I can't get my products into America, our oldest and strongest ally. What the hell's going on? Can't we cut the tariffs and sell more to America? I want to hear business from business large and small on this issue, on the EU issue, and others as well. On Working Time Directive, that is part of the competitiveness agenda, part of that negotiation. We have a opt-out. We need to make sure that's absolutely copper-bottomed and guaranteed in this process. That's very, very important and a point that's made to me a great deal.